Hello everybody, welcome back. It is 7:27 p.m. September 28th, 2017. Alright, first we're going to get right into it. This is the National Hurricane Center disturbance map. We've been looking at this over the last couple days, actually the last couple weeks, but as far as our October season, even though we still have another day and a half pretty much in September, it seems that things are already shifting into the Caribbean, where hurricanes tend to form more times than not. And down in the description below, I'm going to give you guys some links here, and these are just some articles that explain why these storms tend to form in the Caribbean, and then really put areas of Florida at risk. And this article specifically talks about Florida because of the fact that they form in the Caribbean. They don't really have many directions to go once they get in the Caribbean. It's basically as if they skip the entire process of coming off the west coast of Africa and making that long trip west where we watch them for 2 weeks and guess and try to determine if they're going to form. And then if they form, we try to figure out if they're going to ride up the East Coast or if they're going to go into the Gulf. Now, of course, it's good that that part of the season's over, but because of the activity we've had this year, not just myself or other YouTubers for that matter, but the actual meteorologists on TV and stuff like that who really like to downplay things, as I'm sure you guys know, they're even talking about this. This article is about 2 days old. I have actually two pulled up. This one really quick. We're going to go over this quick. I don't want to bore you guys with this stuff with the plain charts, but so we're looking at the water, the temperature of the water. Now, if you notice our western path that comes off the West African coast, you can see that belt that we always talk about, that western belt. We have high shear winds that are always coming off of Africa, and that's what determines whether these storms live or die. They form in this area. A lot of them form on land in Africa, and then the weather is pushed out into the water. And once they hit the water, that's when they begin to develop. And the reason for that is because of warm water. These storms need water and vapor to survive, and if they make it off the continent, they come off usually as spotty storms, and then they start grouping in this area. You can kind of use this as a reference, like those little puffs there. Even though this is a water temperature chart, this is pretty much what it looks like when these storms are about to form. And I'm going to show you our water vapor chart. I'm going to show you a bunch of charts in this video actually, because we're going to try to explain why this is happening and also why there's already so much activity, guys. A couple of charts are even showing 3 developed storms in the next week and a half. Of course, that is subject to change. We all know that. I say that over and over again, just to remind people that I'm not trying to predict hurricanes here. I'm trying to show you guys what goes on around these storms that influence them to then become storms. And a lot of times than not, we've been putting out reports, and then a short time after, they'll put these warnings out. So at least if we can learn what to look for, it'll give you guys a bigger tool set so you can figure this out on your own. So you don't have to sit and rely on the TV to tell you when to jump, when to do this. You know what I mean? It's kind of annoying. And that's part of the reason why I began to learn this stuff a while back, is because I wanted to know on my own. I wanted to see if I could figure this stuff out on my own and understand exactly what they're talking about. They leave a lot of stuff out on TV. Of course, it's about ratings. They don't want to bore people. They want to keep people either on the edge of their seat, or they want to keep them comfortable and not have to worry about anything. It's either black or white. So that's why we're here, and that's what we're going to try to do. So again, these storms that come off West Africa, they usually come into this area by the Cape Verde Islands, and then they'll follow this chart, or this path rather, that's basically the equator. And you guys all know the equator of the Earth is a lot warmer than the northern and southern hemispheres. And that's because of all sorts of wind currents. It's because of different jet streams going on. All that type of stuff. So this is just a good example to show you how the water is warmer along this strip and why hurricanes follow this path before they make a decision once they get to the East Coast in the Gulf, or sometimes they hit these islands and break up, as we've seen before. But you can see clearly here, guys, this is the warmest part of the ocean this time of year. And again, we are in early October. I want to say right off the bat, I think we have another solid month of significant storms coming, and we're going to get into why also. But again, here are the hot water, the warm water charts. You can see why these storms form in this area. The storms start as singular storms themselves. They begin to group together, and then with the help of cyclone winds like we've been seeing coming off Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, that begins to swirl these storms and they compact. Then you get a center wind pull up the middle. It explodes through the top of it, and those outer bands begin to form, and that's where we get our hurricanes, tropical depressions to tropical storms to a Cat 1 storm, and then so on and so forth. So this is just a good chart for you. I'm going to link this in the description box below. This also comes with an article, and then this one I just showed you also has a similar idea. It's showing you the path of basically the hurricanes that form. A lot of times when they form in the Caribbean here, they will tend to go over Cuba and then around the southern tip of Florida and sometimes up the east coast. Sometimes they skip Florida altogether and they'll go right over Cuba and then become an east coast threat or get pulled out to the ocean, or they don't have an arrow here for it, but guys, the Gulf is at big risk in October, and that's simply because the storms are forming so close to home. So what we need to do is we need to go to our charts we've been using. First off, I'm just going to give you our disturbance map. Obviously, we have Maria and Lee, which are clearly beginning to move east. I don't think they're going to be an issue except for this. This was actually kind of funny. This is Lee's projected paths. Most, if not all, are in agreement that it's going to be shot way out into the east, unfortunately towards areas of Ireland and London, stuff like that. Again, I am going to get into that stuff once these storms are really showing that they're going to go in that direction. I don't want to get anyone worked up in these areas that aren't used to this type of weather. But again, just check this out. Lee has a possibility of looping around, and anytime a storm makes a loop and then comes south, even though this model shows it looping back out, that becomes a concern to me, because then it's basically just getting recycled into the same area where they are formed to begin with. So we will keep an eye on it. I don't plan on reporting on it every day unless it becomes a significant issue. So that's it with Lee. Now we're going to look at our water vapor chart slash wind chart, and I was trying to explain to you guys this area here, once again off the west coast of Africa. And I know I just explained most of these storms are forming in the Caribbean. We have a lot to talk about with the Caribbean. We have possibly Nate forming in the next couple days, and then after that is Ophelia, and then we have Felipe. Believe it or not, guys, some of these charts are showing a third hurricane, and this is all within a week and a half, 2 weeks tops. So the data is beginning to come together, and it's just these patterns are beginning to show a lot of activity, especially in the Caribbean. But guys, right off the bat, I want to show you what's coming off of Africa. We talked about this this morning, I believe, if not then last night. But we clearly have a very dense area of storms coming off of Africa right now. And not only that, but rather than having to wait until they get to this area to start forming, we are already seeing counterclockwise spin right under the Cape Verde Islands. If you can see it, these last frames, this is beginning to tumble forward. And if you remember with Hurricane Irma, I believe it was, Irma formed right under these islands. And we also had a bit of a confusing situation with it was Jose and Maria. We didn't know which one was going to form first, and it turned out that the storm that formed here became a tropical storm before this storm did. So they were almost backwards, and it was confusing people. They're like, why was this one named this one and this one, and they're out of order? It goes by order of which storm becomes a tropical storm first. And I know in the thumbnail I have arrows pointing to specific storms with specific names, and that's because that's how they developed on the charts. That may change, so those arrows may change, but the names stay the same. We're still waiting for Nate, Ophelia, and then Felipe would be the third one. So we're getting deep in the alphabet, guys. It's a very busy season, which is why I told you not to be surprised if we see a lot of storms in October, and that's shaping up to be pretty much what we're seeing right now. But again, guys, here we go with these storms. It's getting that forward roll. You can see when they come off, they want to be in a natural clockwise movement. That was the same situation down here, which made a total change. We are now in a counterclockwise movement with a lot of big storms here, and that's why we're up to a 50% chance now. With Nate, we're at a 30% chance over 48 hours. That was up from 10%, then 20, now 30. And then in the 5-day is now at 50%. If you guys remember, we reported on this when it was 10%, and it changed to 20 basically during the upload. And then we went right to 40% this morning, and now right now we're at 50%. So the chances of Nate evolving in this area here right over Cuba and then possibly reforming and staying together to the east side of Florida. I saw some charts that brought it into the coast of Florida and Georgia. Again, that may change because we're still days away. After 3 to 4 days, sometimes 5, it's really a coin toss. But what we're looking for here are the cyclone movements that are going to collect these storms. We're not predicting hurricanes here. We're looking at these charts to see where the cyclones are forming and what's going on around them as far as the thunderstorms. Now, again, 50%, guys, and then Maria and Lee, we can disregard these for right now, at least. We can breathe a breath of fresh air finally. Maria's gone. I think we had Maria for, what, 20 days? Lee, very similar. Anyway, thank God that's over, but here we go again. 50%. If this does form, this will be Nate. All right, so we're going to keep following this. I'm going to show you some charts that actually show this developing into a significant storm. And now we have the Caribbean, guys. We're going to talk about where Nate might be forming, and also right underneath it, about 6 to 7 days later, they are already talking about the formation of Ophelia. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not really good with my pronunciation stuff, but anyway, we're here for the info. So this is the area we're going to be looking at. I'm going to bring you up to this chart first. This is our water vapor chart we've been using for the last week and a half about, and we've been watching this area, guys. We've been talking about that counterclockwise motion that's coming off of North Florida and even Georgia, pulling moisture out of the east coast from the Atlantic, and it's moving down. It's clearly moving in a counterclockwise motion, and what I told you guys to look out for was to watch how far this clockwise motion was going to come south, and we can see it. It's almost hitting the land here. Earlier this morning, the swirl ended about right here. So what's happening now is what we didn't want to happen was these storms forming down here below Cuba are a lot of thunderstorms, guys. You can see the more dense this white color is, the more compact, the more vapors in them, the stronger they are. And you can see they are not staying spotty anymore. They are beginning to group into one big area. And now with this counterclockwise loop, guys, it's beginning to suck that vapor into a swirly wind here. And that's what they call the tropical cyclones. And the next step in this phase, which I'm going to say may even be tonight, it could be as early as tomorrow morning, that we wake up and we see Nate as a tropical depression. They won't name it Nate at a tropical depression. It'll be a tropical storm first, but that'll more than likely be the first name we get out of these 3 that we're talking about. Now you can see it, guys. It's already pulling moisture up into South Florida. They've already given forecasts for South Florida to get a lot of rain, windy stuff going on, and that's just the beginning as far as this formation goes. The formation isn't going to be for another couple days, but all the signs are there, guys. You can see it with your own eyes. It's beginning to swirl together, and these are the signs you look for a tropical depression, and that's why I'm pointing it out. We're going to check out a couple other charts here just to verify this stuff. All right, this is our radar chart. I've been avoiding using this one because it's been so scattered out here. You can't even really make out the continents. And the water vapor charts have been so dense that it's been actually easy to see these spots. But I'm going to use this just for this example of those red colors and even the white. Those are the strongest areas of this formation. And you can clearly see, guys, they are connecting. That red color is getting more dense and more defined. And you can even see the spin up here. It's whipping these storms together. And these storms that are curving so fast in that clockwise motion, they're actually creating storms. There's vapor coming out of the Gulf. The Gulf is still very warm. I showed you that warm water chart, which is all this area here. Very warm water. 85 degrees, talking warm, and that's exactly what you need. You need at least about 80 degrees for significant hurricane formation or tropical depression formation. And then we have that water under the southern tip of Florida, which is some of the warmest water in the world, guys. That's what fuels these hurricanes. That's why we saw hurricanes grow here. Had Irma not made contact with Cuba in that whole deal when we went up the west coast of Florida and did a lot of damage to Naples, guys, the west side of Florida would be just as bad as Puerto Rico is now. So in all reality, Cuba saved us a lot of damage, but the point being is that Irma went through this path, even though the eye wall was being surrounded by land and those wind bands were hitting land constantly. It didn't matter, because as long as that eye wall is in water, that's its fuel cell. That's where it gets all its power from and all its momentum. And that's what I want you guys to keep in your minds when we're looking at these swirls. So this is moving more south. It's beginning to pull up this precipitation, and this is why the tropical depression chances have gone up to 50%. It's a 1 in 2 shot now. So the the speed in which we've been moving up in percentages from the 10 to the 20 to 40 to 50 is really progressing quick. And that's why I'm very convinced that this will be our next tropical depression. It has all the signs right there. And just for you guys that are trying to learn these maps, this is what you look for. You look for spotty storms, and then you see them grouping together, and then you have the influence of a counterclockwise wind. And we can see that's happening. Remember what we talked about the other day. These storms, as they were forming, were clearly in a clockwise motion. That's the way they wanted to go based on how they were forming. They were swirling clockwise, and now that we have that counterclockwise spin interrupting it, you can see, watch this whole area fade away here. As it's forming, it's being pulled up by that clockwise motion, and it's hard to see in this area right now, but it's pulling vapor in a big circle here. And that's how the hurricanes form. So that's why I'm showing you this chart. Got to keep an eye on the reds and the whites, and then yellow and green. The blue is not too much to worry about, but again, the blue doesn't matter when you have these dense storms going on. And now we're going to look at our tropical tidbits charts, and then we're going to check out VENTUSKY to end the video. Right now I have the Canadian model pulled up, and really quick guys, the reason I'm using the Canadian model, they're not very accurate when it comes to the paths of storms, when they're predicting where storms will go, but they've been very, very good at predicting storms forming. And that's why I'm showing you this chart. So if we pay attention here, we have Maria and Lee in this big mess here, heading towards Ireland, London, all those areas. And I'm going to move forward here. And you can see, I want you to watch this area off the west side of Florida, which hasn't even been recognized yet to become a tropical depression, but we saw that forward roll. So I'm expecting that to be yet another formation that we're going to be looking at. We may get a 10% to 20% on the disruption map as early as tomorrow, guys. This stuff's happening quick. It was happening quick all September, so I don't see why this is going to be any different. I'm going to move forward here. You can see that low forming right away. It actually seems to be forming a little quicker on the water vapor / wind chart, the mimic chart. It seems to be forming here, but according to the Canadian model, this does become a significant storm in this area. We have the L for the lows. Anytime you see an L, guys, that's an area that could possibly show cyclone formation, and if there's enough water vapor and storms in that area, you could be looking at another tropical depression. So just to give you an idea, just check this out. Low, 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 low. We have a low way out in the Atlantic after Lee and Maria leave, and there's even a little one up here. I'm not too worried about these up here. The storms that form here, they form in cold water. They tend to not develop, but again, if anything significant happens out here, we are going to be looking at it. But for time's sake, we are looking off the West African coast, and we are looking at the Caribbean. So we're going to keep moving forward. As of right now, the Canadian model has this storm riding up over the Lesser Antilles, not so much hitting them, and then into the Atlantic. Again, this may change, guys. We don't know, and the Canadian model is not that good with storm direction. They're good with storm formation. Now here is another storm. This I think would be, let me back up a little bit. Okay, what I think is happening here is the Canadian model has Nate not so much forming as we saw in the other charts. So I think that this low here would have been Nate. So this could possibly be the storm we're talking about with Ophelia. I'm sorry, not Ophelia. This would be Felipe, based on this. If this happens first, this would be Ophelia. That's why the names get confusing, guys. It's hard to name these storms until they actually exist, because it's all about what becomes a tropical storm. But nonetheless, we have three systems going on here. We have 1, 2, and 3. And just to remind you guys once again, these storms, these two at least, are forming in the warm water of the Caribbean, and then we have that rare one that came off the west coast of Africa. And again, it's because of the busyness of this season that this is not a big surprise to me that we're still getting storms off of West Africa. And this may not be the last one, guys. It really may not be, based on what I'm seeing here. And I'm just going to move forward. And this is what we have as far as the frames go for the Canadian model. We have 1, 2, and then the third possibly forming. If that is the order, the name order will change, but the names stay the same. We still have 3 systems we need to watch out for in the next 2 weeks, guys. This goes up to October 8th, and That is 8, that is 10 days away. So we're talking not even 2 weeks, and these maps are beginning to agree that we're going to have 3 significant systems going on, one being very close to the east coast of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. Again, guys, that article that I'm going to link down in the description box explains in more depth why exactly Florida is more at risk during this time of year. It's not just me making that up. These are facts based on historical data, and you can see it right there. These storms are forming. We dropped down to 996 in this one, and then this one we don't have enough frames to really see yet. I'm going to switch over real quick to the GFS and see what kind of comparisons we have here. I'm going to back up all the way to Maria and Lee, and then move forward, and we see what we get here. You can see that the GFS isn't recognizing this low as a storm yet. Again, the models do disagree on certain things, but again, the Canadian model has been very good at predicting storm formation, not good at the path. But the GFS is recognizing this system coming off of West Africa. Move forward some more. And there we go. This is what I was thinking was going to be Ophelia, that second storm, until I watched the Canadian model and they had a separate storm in this area. So we are dealing with 3 and also another major hurricane in the Pacific Ocean. This area is going to be active all October long. I even saw a chart that showed 2 hurricanes forming here at the same time. Keep moving forward, and you can see the path here. Just because this is whipped out like this may indeed form into a tight storm. The reason for that is because, once again, of the warm water and all the storm action going on in this area. So I highly think that this is going to change from a strip to a very tight storm right in this area. And this is why we're here, guys. This is what we need to look out for. This is what's putting Florida at such a high risk at this time of year. Keep moving it forward, and then you can see there's yet another system that comes off of West Africa according to the GFS. So guys, a lot of action going on. Hurricane season is not over. It ends officially on November 30th. So in all reality, we have 2 full months to go of watching these storms. And with a season this busy, guys, I'm not going to be surprised about it. It's not good news, but I'm not surprised. I was saying this in July, actually. July and beginning of August, I figured October was going to be very busy just based on the info. Really quick, we're going to check out VENTUSKY and see what they have to say about all this. We're at Thursday the 28th. Here is Friday the 29th. And once again, guys, just to clarify, I'm using the 1,500 meter altitude in order to follow wind patterns. I'm not going based on wind strength with these hurricanes. It's way too far out to determine wind strength. I'm using these to show the development of the storms. Here is Saturday the 30th. We have constant rotation now in the Gulf of Mexico, guys. This is going to be constant all October long. And that's another reason why these storms form here. When you have a constant counterclockwise movement in an area as big as the Gulf, anytime you get spotty storms, it makes that percentage go so much higher that it will turn into a tropical depression, if that makes sense. This I believe, is what will be the beginning of Nate here. Nate is projected to form in this area and then move to the east side of Florida and then be something that has to do with the east coast here. We need just a little bit more time to see how far it's going to go. Based on the prediction charts I'm seeing, I believe it will form in this area. I don't know how strong it's going to be yet, but guys, just the fact that they're forming is what's important here. Sunday the 1st. Still have a big rotation here just to the southeast of Houston. So this right here could be a system. Then we have this system here. We got another one up in the Atlantic. Again, these aren't that important to look at if they're being pulled out by jet stream. A lot of action still going on in the western belt too, according to VENTUSKY. Monday the 2nd, significant storm down here now being formed. Again, here's that hurricane in the Pacific Ocean. And again, we're still dealing with rotation just under Houston and the south part of Texas. We'll move into the 3rd. Here's the 3rd. We got more rotation in the Atlantic. Again, guys, this may all change. All these patterns may change, but the fact that they're showing storms forming is what I'm looking at here. Wednesday the 4th. Thursday the 5th, this is a significant storm. This is a hurricane right here. This may be a hurricane right here. Here is Friday the 6th. Significant hurricane in the middle of the Atlantic by Bermuda. This could be a hurricane at that point too. And then look, more spin going on right in the area that we're going to be watching for the next month, maybe more. And this is as far as we can take it. Saturday the 7th. Just take a look at this, guys. This is not even 2 weeks away. We have a hurricane here, probably tropical storm there. If that's the case, we could be dealing with Fujiwhara once again. Significant storm out in the middle of the Atlantic, causing low pressure, which means it'll be a high pressure here. Will that influence storms? We don't know. That's why we watch the high and low pressures. And then right by La Habana in Cuba, more rotation going on. By the 7th, the beginning of yet another storm. So I put 3 on the thumbnail, guys, and just in this map alone, I've counted 4 or 5 possible storms, and we are only at October 7th. Guys, this is why we do this stuff. This is why I really enjoy watching this weather. I'm grateful for every single one of you guys that leave all the positive comments down below. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm trying to teach you guys what to look for when these storms become active. This is a very, very active situation. You do not see this every October. This is very rare. They were saying it was rare in September that we were getting all those storms, and I don't see October being any different, guys. I'm going to bring you hopefully one more update by the end of tonight. If I don't get to it, tomorrow morning's another day, and then I have the entire weekend to sit and look at this stuff with you guys, and we're going to see what happens. Guys, thank you all so much. I'll be back shortly.